Hello viewers and welcome to another exciting, delicious edition of Teach Me How to Cook with me, Diana Master. I'm outside, so you know what that means. Yes, it means another delicious episode of a no-cook recipe. Today we're going to be making 4 dishes. Yes, again, no cook, but you do need a microwave, but it's nothing too hectic. And today's episode is all about the sweet lovers. Yes, because today we are cooking and making only delicious treats that you or your kids or anybody that you know that has a sweet tooth will enjoy. So stick around as we get back into how we can prepare some of these things and what exactly it is that we're making. Now, first things first, we do have to start with washing our hands, so follow me. Righty. Cool. Hands are clean. Alrighty, so now let's get into what we are going to be making today. So for our beverage, we're going to be making some dalgona coffee. Now, the dalgona coffee was very famous during COVID-19. Yes, the Koreans were making it, and it became a trend, so everybody was making dalgona coffee. If you don't know what dalgona coffee is, I will explain to you shortly. So we're going to make dalgona coffee. We're going to make fairy bread. Yes, this is a fun treat for the kids. And then after we make fairy bread, we're going to make 2 versions of a microwave mug cake. Who says you need an oven to bake? You can just use your microwave. All right, so stick around as we prepare those ingredients for all of our dishes. Right, so now for our dalgona coffee. It's actually not as complicated as you think it may be. So what we need is some coffee, 2 tablespoons of that. We need some sugar, 2 tablespoons of that, and some hot water, which is also 2 tablespoons. It's 2 tablespoons of everything. If you don't want to use 2 tablespoons, you can always use 1, but make sure that all the proportions is 1:1:1, right? So if you're using 3 teaspoons of sugar, 3 teaspoons of coffee, 3 teaspoons of water, just like that. And you are going to whisk. Yes, we are going to whip it up real good, and you're not even going to be able to recognize it as soon as we're done. Our coffee, right? Wipe that up. Our sugar, again, like I said, you can alter this recipe to your needs. If you are lactose intolerant, you can always use soy milk, you can always use almond milk, whatever milk substitute that you use. And then, of course, our water. Okay, and then we are going to mix that up. So it's going to go from this. You're going to see some magic. Well, not really magic, but you're going to see it transform right before your eyes. It's actually quite fascinating. I didn't know that just coffee, sugar, and water could get you this consistency. We put our spoon to the side, we get our whisk, and we start whisking. Alrighty. So you're going to mix it up. As you can see, it's starting to turn into like a moussey consistency. As you can see, even the color has changed. It's not even as dark as it was before. So this really and truly is all about like what kind of consistency you want. You see? They do say that you should mix it up until it's not as runny, but you see mine is still runny, but that doesn't matter. We made a little bit of a mess there. And if you watched Squid Game, you remember that game that they played where they had to cut out the shapes and not break the cookie? That's called the dalgona game, because the sweets are made from dalgona, which is what you see here. Look at that. Ooh. Okay, so if you want, you can still mix it up a bit more, but I think This is good consistency for us. Okay, just going to clean up. Here on Teach Me How to Cook, we clean as we go. Okay, just need some more paper towel. See, it's quite messy, haha, but it's fine. So now that we have that, we're gonna get our glass, right? We're gonna put some milk in there. Fill up the glass with some milk. And then we are going to add now our dalgona. Okay. So what I usually like to do is to freeze the milk beforehand, because when I drink iced coffee, I want it to be that. I want it to be iced coffee, right? Let me just wash the spoon so we can... So we can scoop all of that in there, some more paper towel, because you can never use too much paper towel for our whisk. And then we just get whatever else is left of this. So I was saying, I like to freeze my milk a little bit, like not freeze it like rock hard, but you know when it does that weird ice crystal thingamajig, where it's not like frozen, but it's also not solid. And then after I do this, after I put my dalgona in there, then I take a blender and then I whisk everything up. You see, because it makes it easier for you to mix. So now we're gonna mix that up. Mix it. Or if you want, you can always just, after you do this, put it in the freezer, let it chill for a bit. If you like your iced coffee properly iced like me. So I will probably pop this in the refrigerator. If not, you can always add ice. Now, I know what you were thinking earlier. You're probably like, that's a lot of sugar. Well, the milk actually neutralizes the sugar. Yep. I'm gonna put my straw in there. Yes. So we'll put that to the side. All right, now stick around, because after the break, we are getting into some fairy bread and also some fun facts of what fairy bread is and where it actually originated from. Stick around. Now we are getting into our fairy bread. Fairy bread, I know you're probably wondering, like, what is fairy bread? It's literally nothing special. Do you know how I found out about... sorry about that. You know how I found out about fairy bread? I was reading my daughter a bedtime story, and it was about this girl who loved fairy bread, right? She loved it so much that she had her mom make so much of it to a point where she didn't want any more fairy bread and they had to throw it away. So I decided to Google. I'm like, what is fairy bread? Well, apparently it's a party staple in, I think, Australia. I speak under correction. So we just use some bread. We get our butter or margarine. No, the recipe strictly calls for margarine, not butter, margarine. So you're gonna spread that, evenly coat. Apparently it's a party staple over that side. It's not very common here. I haven't even tried it, but I am curious to see. Apparently kids love it. So yeah, okay. So once that is done, we're gonna do that. Okay. Actually, let me do it like this. What am I doing? Okay, there we go. And then we are gonna get our 100,000. It calls strictly for 100,000, not vermicelli or vermicelli. I don't know how you pronounce it. Not those kind of sprinkles. It strictly calls for 100,000. Okay, so we open those up. You know, growing up, 100,000s were my favorite. Every time my mom used to bake, I always used to get some. So and then we just sprinkle that. All over, all over, all over, all over, all over. Right. Put it there. Let's be generous with the sprinkles. I actually don't think this tastes good, but since it's so popular in Australia, and I think the Dutch also make it for their kids' birthdays, I'm gonna try it. And then once that is done, we just slice it up into triangles. I am very skeptical to try this. So that's your fairy bread, apparently. Okay, it's good, but it's not something that I would say I'm craving fairy bread. You know, it's actually quite delicious. The 100,000s, because they're sweet and they stick well to the butter. Think icing. Yeah. Once everything has been mushed up in your mouth, it just tastes like you're eating icing sugar. Because you know, icing sugar, you make it with the icing sugar and the margarine. So that's literally what I'm getting from this. I'm gonna have a sip of my dalgona coffee. Okay, so that's fairy bread. Now, before we do that, let's get into some fun facts about fairy bread and what fairy bread actually is, if my little explanation didn't already give it away. And now, here are some facts about fairy bread. Well, fairy bread is especially popular in Australia and New Zealand and is often served at children's birthday parties. It's basically a rite of passage there. Another fact, it's only 3 ingredients. You already saw that. It's literally just white bread, some margarine, and 100,000s. Now, did you know that fairy bread is over 100 years old? Yes, the first known mention of fairy bread in Australia was in 1929 in a newspaper in Hobart, Tasmania. That's almost a century of sweet sprinkle-covered joy. Now, you may remember that I did say that I first read or first found out about fairy bread through my child's novel. So, it's not surprising that fairy bread is actually named after a poem. The name fairy bread may have come from a line in Robert Louis Stevenson's poem where he wrote, "Come up here, O dusty feet, here is fairy bread to eat." Number 5. No one knows who actually invented it. Unlike other food inventions, no single person or brand is credited with creating fairy bread. It just kind of magically appeared and became legendary. And finally, it's all about the vibe, not nutrition. Fairy bread isn't about being fancy or healthy, it's pure childhood nostalgia and joy on the plate. Think soft, sweet, and extra with every bite. Now, modern versions are wild. Some people now make fairy bread with colored bread, toasted bread, chocolate spread instead of butter, star or heart-shaped bread cutouts, but traditionalists say keep it simple, keep it magical. Though I think I will definitely be trying the chocolate spread later on because I do have to say the original recipe was not a hit with my daughter. Alright, so there are your fun facts or did you know facts for today, and that's when it comes to fairy bread. Welcome back, viewers. So yes, we have made our dalgona coffee. We've made our fairy bread. You've learned a little more about dalgona coffee and fairy bread. Though to be honest, a fairy bread tastes exactly how I thought it would taste. You know, for a 3-ingredient recipe, just bread, butter, and 100,000s. Yeah, it tastes exactly how I expected it to taste. Nevertheless, now we are making a chocolate mug cake. Just how it sounds, right? We are making it in a mug and we're going to bake it in the microwave. And this literally takes 2 minutes to cook. So we're going to start with our flour. Okay, 4 tablespoons of flour. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. The recipe does call for cocoa powder, but cocoa powder is expensive, guys. It's very expensive. So you can substitute that for with hot chocolate. Okay, got a sachet of that. Put that in there. This means that then with the sugar, we need to put less sugar. Okay, so we put our cocoa in there. Gonna add a bit more, not the whole thing. Okay, I'm gonna add, I think, about half a sachet. Mix it up. And then we're gonna put some sugar. I'm gonna start with 1 because this already has sugar, so we don't want our cake to be too sweet. You know what? The recipe says 2, so I'm gonna put 1.5 because I don't like my stuff too sweet. And then we need half a teaspoon of baking powder. Now, of course, I don't have a scissors and I don't have anything, so we're just gonna go old school. Yeah, some baking powder. It does say half a teaspoon. I don't have a teaspoon, so we're just gonna do a pinch. Now, you don't want to put too much baking powder because then it's gonna be sour, okay? I don't have a pinch of salt, but that's fine. Okay. And then after this, we are gonna add our milk. There's our milk. We need 3 tablespoons of milk. 1, 2, 3. That's our milk. Okay, we're gonna mix that up. And then we need some oil. I'm gonna get a clean spoon. 2 tablespoons of oil. 1, 2. Now this is good if you don't eat eggs. Okay. And then some vanilla essence. Okay, half a teaspoon of that. See, life is easier if you have your measuring spoons and measuring cups. But I don't have measuring spoons, I only have measuring cups. So now what we're going to do is mix all of that up. Mix it, mix it, mix it. If it's too thick or the consistency is not right, you can just add just a bit of milk, as much as you see fit. Not too much because we don't want it to be too runny, because remember we are making this in the microwave, yeah? So we do want it to be like thick, and we want to get all up in there. Mix that up, mix it, mix it, mix it. This is a single serve, if you hadn't guessed already. And if you want, you can always, once it's cooked, you can always top it up with some ice cream. You can always top it up with some yogurt. I personally like to put Greek yogurt on mine because the Greek yogurt balances out the sweetness. I'm sure if you know me by now, you already know I don't like anything too sweet, which is maybe why the fairy bread wasn't such a hit for me, because of the butter and the 100,000s. Okay, if you want, you can add some chocolate chips in here or some chocolate sprinkles. So there is your chocolate mud cake. Now what we're going to do is pop this in the microwave for 1:45. You take it out. If you have a skewer, you can just put a skewer, see if it's cooked in the middle, and then we will get to eating this. Alrighty, so that's for our chocolate mud cake. Now, I know what you're thinking, oh, but then I don't like chocolate. It's fine, I've got you covered, because right after this, we are making a vanilla mug cake. Stick around. Alrighty, now for all you vanilla lovers, it's going to literally be the same recipe, but vanilla. So instead of chocolate, we are going to use some vanilla essence. Okay, so we start again with our 4 tablespoons of flour. If you want a healthy alternative of the chocolate mud cake, you can actually use oats or oat flour. Now, oat flour might be a bit expensive, so what you need to do, what you can do, is simply just blend or grind up your oats. I literally just pop them in a blender and then they become powder, and that's my oat flour. Okay, because I know I, for one, am gluten intolerant. I know you've probably seen me eating a lot of things that have gluten, but have you ever seen me finish them? No. Okay. And then we're going to need 2 tablespoons of sugar. 1, 2. And then we are going to need, again, a pinch of salt, but I don't have that. So we mix all of that in. Our 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla essence. 1/2 teaspoon vanilla essence. 3 tablespoons of milk. 1, 2, 3. And then our 2 tablespoons of oil. 1, 2. And then again, we just mix that up. Mix it, mix it, mix it. Again, it's too thick, as you can see. This actually looks a bit like cookie dough. You know, people eat cookie dough just like that. I know, strange to say the least, but yeah. I'm gonna add just a bit more. And then we mix that up again. Alrighty, so you see, now that that is all mixed, if you aren't sure about the sugar, what you can do is just taste a bit. This is perfect. Let's go back to the chocolate nut cake. Perfect. Chocolate, vanilla. Now I'm going to pop these in the microwave for 1 minute 45, and then we're going to see how it looks as soon as we are done.